Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. We have some breaking news being reported by ESPN's Brett Okamoto. A middleweight contender fight has been added to UFC 285 March 4th of 2023. We are getting Derek Brunson versus Dricus Du Plessis, and this is going to be my reaction and an early prediction for this middleweight contender fight. And honestly, my initial reaction when reading this news was kind of just like, yuck. I don't really care about this fight all that much. Don't get me wrong, it's a decent fight. Don't get me wrong, it's relevant to the middleweight division. Don't get me wrong, I'm super excited that this is not a main event of like a fight night card, because then I would really be disturbed by this matchup. It makes sense kind of in the rankings, but there's other matchups I would have preferred. I would have loved to see Du Plessis versus Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, just had a fight fallout with Paulo Costa. Was supposed to be on UFC 284. Dricus Du Plessis making his way up the ranks. Why not have him fight Robert Whittaker? I would have much preferred that matchup. And I don't want to sit here and just shit on the fight nonstop. Du Plessis is undefeated in the UFC. He's had nothing but exciting fights. Derek Brunson has been around forever. He was supposed to fight Jack Hermansson, I believe, back at UFC 282. But he was supposed to fight Jack Hermansson in December. Whenever Roman Dolidze stepped in and ended up TKOing Jack Hermansson, that was supposed to be Derek Brunson's fight. So he's been injured. He hasn't fought. His last fight was February of this year against Jarrett Cannonier when he got TKO'd in the second round by those brutal elbows to essentially give Jarrett Cannonier a title shot against Israel Adesanya. And I just think it's one of those things, and the UFC has a history of doing this with Derek Brunson. We're going to talk about it more in depth in a second. But they just consistently try to make Derek Brunson a stepping stone. And thus far, it hasn't really worked outside of maybe Jarrett Cannonier, but that was just because of the lack of the depth of the division with Israel Adesanya as champion that Jarrett Cannonier kind of propelled to a title shot after that. But they've just been non-successful in making Derek Brunson that like #1 contender gatekeeper or whatever else you want to call him, just that stepping stone for up-and-coming contenders. Because you go back and you look at Derek Brunson's resume, okay? Let's discuss this for a second. You go back and you start August of 2020. Edmund Shabazian. At this point in time, they were trying to push Edmund Shabazian. What happens? Edmund Shabazian gets TKO'd in the third round by Derek Brunson. The fight after that is Kevin Holland. This is back in March of 2021, so right before I started my YouTube channel. At this point in time, Kevin Holland was on, I think it was like a 4 or 5 fight win streak. He had just brutally TKO'd Jacare Souza. They were pushing Kevin Holland. What did Derek Brunson do? He went out there, out-grappled and beat him up on the ground, wins a decision, a dominant decision. Then the UFC, back in September of last year, September of 2021, they match him up with Darren Till. And there was some talk going into this fight. With the depth of the division, with Israel Adesanya reigning over top the middleweight division and not a lot of contenders there was talk if Darren Till defeated Derek Brunson, that Darren Till might be fighting Israel Adesanya for a middleweight title. And they've just perpetually kept doing this to Derek Brunson. And what has he done? He's continued to send these fighters to the back of the line. The only person that really got through was Israel Adesanya. They did it with Israel Adesanya back in November of 2018. Israel Adesanya went out there, finished Derek Brunson. But after that, I mean, we're talking wins over Elias Theodoro. Doesn't really mean much. Win over Ian Heinisch. And then they started, okay, we're going to build some of these younger up-and-coming guys' names off of Derek Brunson. And he just continues to send them back. So this is going to be an interesting fight. There's a massive age gap. Derek Brunson's 38 years old. I think he's talked about retirement a little bit. Dricus Du Plessis, 28 years old, so a 10 years difference. Du Plessis only has 2 losses in his pro MMA career. Hasn't lost since 2018, and that's against Roberto Soldic. So he hasn't lost in a while. He's undefeated in the UFC. He's finished every opponent in the UFC outside of Brad Tavares at UFC 276. He's coming in off a win over Darren Till, so both of these guys' most recent wins are against Darren Till. But to be honest, I hate to sit here and crap on Darren Till. A win over Darren Till means nothing. And I know Dana White came out afterwards, after UFC 282, after Du Plessis defeated Darren Till, said both guys look great and Darren Till's stock doesn't go down and Du Plessis' stock goes through the roof. I really don't think so. I think both guys looked horrible in that fight, to be honest. And Du Plessis has shown through his last 2 fights that cardio is an issue. Constantly having cardio issues. And I know he fights through it and he gets the win. He submitted Darren Till in the 3rd round. But he had a hellacious 2nd round after almost finishing Darren Till in the 1st round. And at the end of the 1st round, Du Plessis Darren Till ended up getting the advantage. And this is a Darren Till who does not seem motivated. He does not seem like he wants to be in there. It seems like he's showing up for a paycheck. And you're having a difficult fight with him. And I know he dominated him, 10-8'd him arguably. Well, I guess not really because of the end of that round. But you could make the argument for a 10-8 in the first round. I don't think the Darren Till win means a whole lot. And I really do believe this could be another one of those scenarios where you take a young up-and-coming guy in Dricus Du Plessis, you put him against Derek Brunson, and I know Derek Brunson's getting up there in age. He's 38 years old. I know he's coming off a brutal KO loss against Jared Cannonier. I know he's going to be out. By the time he fights, he's going to be out for about 13 months because he fought February 2022. This fight is in March of 2023. So he'll be out a little over a year by the time Derek Brunson returns. But this could be another one of those cases where the UFC feeds a contender, a potential contender, to Derek Brunson. We're gonna have to start, if Derek Brunson wins this fight, we're gonna have to start calling Derek Brunson the middleweight contender killer, because that's what he is at this point. He's killing off basically hype trains. And I don't want to say Du Plessis is a hype train, because he's not. There's not a whole lot of people like crazy behind him. But he's looked, okay. He's going out there and finishing guys. But every single one of his fights, and that trend continued. I talked about it going into the Darren Till fight. Every single one of his fights, he's faced some adversity. Even in the fights he's getting wins, he had some moments where he was losing against Trevin Giles and Brad Tavares. I thought Brad Tavares might finish him at one point, just the way the fight was going and playing out. So I think a lot of people going into this fight are going to look at it and they're going to say, oh, this is an easy win for Du Plessis. I do not think that's the case. I think Derek Brunson is a veteran. He has great wrestling. He out-wrestled Yoel Romero. People forget that. He out-wrestled Yoel Romero. Du Plessis, even though he uses the grappling quite a bit, especially in his UFC career, he's primarily a striker. And the fundamentals of his striking have not looked particularly good. He is squaring up. He is rushing forward. He's throwing wild haymakers. And I think at some point, I think we could really see him get brutally KO'd. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen against Derek Brunson at all, but, you look at their skill sets, I don't think either one of these guys is a particularly good striker. Derek Brunson's striking leaves a lot to be desired. He's primarily wants to get you down, beat you up on the ground, either submit you or finish you via ground and pound. Du Plessis, he likes to mix it all in, but he's not particularly amazing anywhere. He's not, this brutal KO artist. Even though he does have a decent amount of KOs, he has 18 wins, 7 KOs. He's not some amazing submission artist. He has some submission ability. But Du Plessis, what he's known for is his durability and the fact that he's ready to just rush in and attempt to steamroll anybody he fights. And he's always in exciting fights. You have to give him credit for that. But this is a matchup that I really believe could go either way. It would not surprise me if Derek Brunson sends him back to the line. It would not shock me if Du Plessis goes out there, rushes forward, maybe catches Derek Brunson on the chin and puts him to sleep. But I don't think that's super likely either. I mean, I know he got finished by Jared Cannonier, but Jared Cannonier has unbelievable power, especially in his ground and pound and those brutal elbows. And people forget, Derek Brunson won the first round against Jared Cannonier. So, even then, even in a fight that he lost, because before that, he's on a 5-fight winning streak. So even in a fight he lost against Jared Cannonier, he won the first round. I know he got finished, but he's taken some time off. This is a very tough fight to predict. I'm trying to give you an early prediction here. But honestly, my official thought, or my earliest thought when I initially heard this matchup, I'm going Derek Brunson. I think that he can out-wrestle Dricus Du Plessis. Now, I do think Du Plessis is an absolute madman. I do think he can rush forward. I do think he could maybe clip Derek Brunson on the chin and put him to sleep. I do think his wild, just pace and the way he just throws wild haymakers and volume, I think he could put Derek Brunson out. I think he could hurt him badly, finish him on the ground, maybe with a submission. But there's one massive hole in Du Plessis' game, and that is his cardio. And Derek Brunson doesn't have the greatest cardio either, but I think it's significantly better than Du Plessis. And now whether that is indicative of his game plan, the way he goes out there and fights, because he comes out and says, I'm not tired. I'm just, I got my mouth wide open, sucking air like I look like I'm suffocating, just because that's the way I am. Because that's what Du Plessis has said in the past, because cardio looked awful against Darren Till. He looked completely gassed in the second round. I know he got the win in the third round, got the finish, but, he got a break, got a second win, whatever you want to say. the Brad Tavares fight, cardio looked awful as well, even though he won that fight. And Derek Brunson is just a guy who he looks for the takedown. He looks for the ground and pound finish. And I think he has the better wrestling. I think, he is older. He's going to be out for over a year by the time he steps in there. And I think Du Plessis can get it done, but I'm going Derek Brunson in this fight. My early prediction, I'm going Derek Brunson second round TKO. Because if Darren Till, at the end of round 1, after Du Plessis looked for the finish, because he's just always looking for the finish, he tried to finish Darren Till up against the fence. And he basically gassed out. And then Darren Till got off some good shots on the ground at the end of round 1. If Derek Brunson gets him in that position where he's gasping for air, he looks like a fish out of water, and he gets Du Plessis on his back, which Du Plessis, say what you will about maybe his takedown defense, but the way he strikes, he can easily trip over his own feet and fall to the ground, basically, because he's just so wild, and Derek Brunson could clinch up, look for a trip. And if Derek Brunson ends up on top of him, and he's sucking for air, and he's tired, as in Du Plessis, who's on the bottom, I think Derek Brunson finishes him with ground and pound. Derek Brunson has nasty power in his hands. People forget about that. Derek Brunson has amazing wrestling, and he has decent submissions as well. It's not like he's submitting everyone on their side. I mean, he's 23 wins, 4 by submission, 12 by knockout, and 7 by decision. But he can get a submission done, and especially when you're exhausted. If Dricus goes out there, blows his load in the first round, looking for a finish, looking to just run through Derek Brunson, I think second round comes around, Derek Brunson gets him down. Whether it's a clinch and a takedown, whether it's, catches him off balance, something, throws him to the ground. If Derek Brunson gets on top of him in the second round, Derek Brunson is going to finish him with ground and pound elbows. I think Derek Brunson is going to be the guy who's just constantly sending back contenders. Because there's no doubt what the UFC is trying to do here. They're building Dricus Du Plessis off the name of Derek Brunson. Not that Derek Brunson's a massive name, but you start looking at the division right now. Alex Pereira is the champion. He's fighting Israel Adesanya next. Robert Whittaker's available, but maybe the UFC said, you know what? We don't want to put Du Plessis against Robert Whittaker because Robert Whittaker's probably going to beat him. I mean, I would bet my house that Robert Whittaker would beat Du Plessis, but I think that's what the UFC's thinking. Let's give him the highest contender that we can give him with the most probability that he's going to win. And you look through the division, you look through the entire top 10 or the top 9 that's in front of Du Plessis, and it's Derek Brunson. It's the one that jumps out to you. Du Plessis is currently ranked number 10. Derek Brunson's ranked number 5. Du Plessis ain't beating Robert Whittaker. I don't think he's beating Jarrett Cannonier. I don't think he's beating Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori's booked anyway against Roman Dolidze. I don't think he's beaten Paulo Costa. That would be kind of an interesting matchup. I don't think he's doing that. And Paulo Costa has contractual issues. Sean Strickland's coming off a loss. Just lost to Jarrett Cannonier. It was a controversial fight. I don't even think he's beaten Sean Strickland, to be honest. I would favor Sean Strickland heavily in that matchup. So, and also he just fought. So maybe he's not ready to return in just a couple months. He would have to jump right back into training camp. Roman Dolidze's fighting Marvin Vettori. I would favor Dolidze in that fight as well. So outside of that, unless you do Jack Hermanson, who's just coming off a TKO loss, how are you going to build the name up? So they're giving him a top 5 opponent. And the middleweight division starting to get a little bit of a turnover here. Roman Dolidze fighting number 4, Marvin Vettori. Dricus Du Plessis, number 10, fighting number 5 in Derek Brunson. I think it's good matchmaking, but the UFC's trying to build Du Plessis as a middleweight contender with a win over Derek Brunson. But to be honest, the fight that I wanted to see, and for me personally, it's more compelling than this matchup. I wanted to see Chris Curtis versus Dricus Du Plessis. That's a matchup I wanted to see. I know Chris Curtis just beat Joaquin Buckley, who wasn't ranked at the time of the win, but it was a super impressive win. Dricus Du Plessis gets the win over Darren Till on the same card. They were supposed to fight back at UFC 273 earlier this year, so I wish the UFC would have rebooked that matchup. But I understand what they're doing. They're trying to build up Du Plessis as a contender. He's number 10. He's young. He's 28. He's promotable. And they're trying to build his name off of Derek Brunson. And if he wins this fight against Derek Brunson, he's right in line, probably 1, maybe 2 more fights away from a middleweight title shot, depending on how the division plays out. So it's a very important fight for Du Plessis. And for Derek Brunson also, he loses this fight. He's already up there in age. Another loss. I think it's probably going to be time for Derek Brunson to hang it up. So let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. I greatly appreciate it. And don't forget to like the video as well. I appreciate the support and thank you so much for watching.